You're listening to The Edge 105.1 and 105.3 FM. Your life, your music.
The Edge!
And on The Edge, we step inside the legal landscape. At the beginning of October 2021, media houses around the world published millions of documents, images and emails that showed secret deals and hidden assets of some of the world's richest and most powerful people. Now, this massive data leak is known as the Pandora Papers, and it has revealed how these people have hidden assets and transacted in the shadows to avoid certain regulations and taxes. So what lessons can we learn from the leak of the Pandora Papers here in Jamaica? If we learn that our employers or politicians are doing something improper, can that information be disclosed safely in our society? Jonathan Morgan is a partner at DunnCox Attorneys-at-Law and is our guest to discuss a Jamaican perspective on the Pandora Papers. Good afternoon, Mr. Morgan. Welcome to The Edge.
Good afternoon, Dion. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Let's start off, first of all, with a bit of background, Jonathan. Where did the Pandora Papers come from and what do they entail?
Yes, so the Pandora Papers came from 14 different companies that are responsible for setting up offshore businesses and bank accounts for the rich and famous. So these companies leaked a set of information, millions of documents, to a group of U.S. journalists, which showed how some rich and powerful people have been using offshore companies to hide their wealth. So we don't know whether the information in the Pandora Papers is all true, but it has led to some scandalous stories already, including deals done by the English royal family, the King of Jordan, the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, and so on. It has really given a glimpse into that shadowy offshore financial sector, and it has revealed how prominent people are funneling and siphoning money away to hide it, as you said, in an effort to avoid taxes, I believe.
So could something like that happen in Jamaica, Jonathan?
Oh, it certainly can. I mean, the leak of the Pandora Papers is an extreme example of whistleblowing. And this has happened, of course, to a lesser degree in Jamaica previously. I recall in 2006, some listeners may remember the Trafigura leak. This was when a bank employee lost his job after releasing information that showed a Dutch firm transferred 31 million into the account of a Jamaican politician. I also remember 2013 when Renee and Shirley leaked information on Jamaica's what was called negligible levels of dope testing leading up to the 2012 Olympics. I mean, Shirley disclosed that only a single out-of-competition test was conducted prior to that period, and 8 Jamaican athletes failed the dope test. I know some people would remember this as the landmark event that led to our beloved Asafa Powell and Sharon Simpson being suspended in 2014. So whistleblowing is certainly not new to Jamaica, and a large-scale leak of some political or even corporate misconduct can certainly happen here.
All right, you are listening to The Edge 105. We are inside the legal landscape, and our guest today is Jonathan Morgan, who is a partner at DunnCox Attorneys-at-Law. So if you have any questions on the topic, you can send them to our WhatsApp line, 876-383-1166, or you may actually call us in studio, 876-906-9559. The Pandora Papers. Jonathan, what lessons should our listeners learn from the leak of the Pandora Papers?
Yes, I think there are 2 lessons that your listeners should focus on when something like this happens. The lessons can be learned by both the prominent members of society and by the everyday members of society. For example, politicians, companies, and the rich and famous should be careful in their dealings at this time. Following a major leak like this, it is important to appreciate that the season is calling for greater corporate transparency. I mean, people want to know what the government and what major corporations are doing with their money. It's just a fact. And everyday individuals, employees and workers should also appreciate that they are entitled to learn about improper conduct and that the law in Jamaica is designed to protect them if they discover some misconduct, especially misconduct by their employer, and they choose to disclose it. So the protections afforded by the law in Jamaica, however, are not absolute. It takes the form of the Protected Disclosures Act, and it governs any whistleblowing that meets specific criteria or specific conditions.
All right. So you said that the whistleblowers in Jamaica are protected by the law if they satisfy certain conditions. What are those conditions?
Well, let's say, for example, you live next to a politician and you accidentally receive that politician's mail. You open it because curious Jamaicans may, and you discover that the politician has a secret bank account in the Cayman Islands with $20 million in it. The first instinct may be to share that information with the gleaner or the observer. But in that particular case, in these factual circumstances, you would not be protected by the law for your whistleblowing efforts. That's because the whistleblower law in Jamaica is confined to the workplace. It is confined to the relationship between a worker and the employer. And if a worker discovers some misconduct or improper conduct on the part of their employer, they may reveal it and receive some protection. As it relates to government officials, for example, it is those individuals who are employed to the government officials who can reveal misconduct and receive protection. There are some other conditions, of course. It must be disclosed to designated persons named under the legislation, attorneys-at-law, minister, or the information authority. And the information disclosed must be done in good faith. That means you cannot be motivated out of spite or malice when you wish to disclose information. And it also must be done in the public's interest. The dominant purpose for sharing the information must be that it serves the general public to learn this, or it is a matter of broad general concern. It cannot be that it serves your personal interest and that's why you want to disclose it. So I think those really cover the broad conditions.
Interesting. But if there's someone now who's sitting down and thinking, I want to be a whistleblower, they're going to want to know how will they be protected. So if they fall in the category that you said that makes it, yes, you need to share this or you can share this, how will they be protected? Can the law guarantee that whistleblowers won't lose their jobs, for example?
It can. It certainly can. What the law contemplates is that workers or employees who make protected disclosures cannot be penalized at work for that disclosure. So if they are terminated as a result of blowing the whistle on some misconduct at work, or even if they are suspended or demoted, they can bring an action against the company for breaching the terms of the Protected Disclosures Act. On the other hand, other whistleblowers who satisfy the conditions I mentioned earlier may also be protected against legal actions. So let's take, for example, in the context of the employment relationship, if you have a contract that says you have to keep the company's details secret, those confidentiality provisions are in your contract, but you choose to blow the whistle on some misconduct by your employer, they're siphoning money away, for example. The law provides that you cannot be held responsible for breaching the secrecy clause in the contract if you in fact made a protected disclosure and you met the conditions earlier stated.
So even if they are protected by the law, Jamaican society has a strong anti-informer culture. So should whistleblowers be concerned about social repercussions?
Definitely. I would say they should certainly be concerned. I mean, the law protects you from the formal repercussions, like it protects you against being fired or against being suspended. But it does not protect you from negative stigma. And that is simply a reality that we do face in Jamaica. So let's take, for example, Renee Shirley, who I mentioned earlier, who had leaked details from JADCO that led to the suspension of Asafa and Sharon. Renee, after her protected disclosure, told the newspaper that she was branded by the public a traitor and that she was forced to even relocate. She had to move out of her home because of the pressures that she felt in her community. So our listeners have to weigh the interests carefully. On one hand, it is important to disclose improper conduct, especially when it will help the general public. But on the other hand, we should be careful to navigate the social consequences of our decisions, because sometimes the price for doing the right thing seems a little too high to pay.
Well, Jonathan, we have one question in from a listener. I am going to share it with you. You can tell me how you want to navigate with this one. Ambleton says, concerning the Pandora box revelation, what about the churches in Jamaica? They don't pay tax and manage large amounts of cash secretly.
Very interesting. The income generated by churches, I think, is a niche area. It's certainly something that tax experts would have to consult on. But what we're dealing with now is the scope of making protected disclosures in relation to misconduct. And I don't believe the criteria of churches collecting tithe or offering and not paying taxes on it would fall within that category. I don't think it would be considered misconduct in our society.
Thank you so much.
It's a little outside of the remit of this topic, but certainly happy to receive the question.
Well, thank you so much, Ambleton, for sharing a question as well. Join us next week on The Edge. We will have another edition for you. But before you leave, we are going to ask you to give us a hashtag, did you know?
Certainly. Well, many people will remember reports that the former President Donald Trump paid just $750 in tax in 2016. Well, did you know that the Pandora Papers have now revealed that many other world leaders utilize hidden real estate to do similar things? This is not something unique to Donald Trump. I think it's something we should all be mindful of.
Jonathan Morgan, partner at DunnCox Attorneys-at-Law, is our guest, and we looked at a Jamaican perspective on the Pandora Papers. Thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan. We look forward to another legal landscape next week, same time, same place. See you then.
Thank you, Dion. My pleasure. All the best.
Thank you.